Hey everybody, welcome back to another video on the channel. In today's video we're going to be talking about the pricing for the Xbox Series X and for the PlayStation 5. So this is all just kind of preliminary guesses as for how much it's going to cost, but we're going to go into a kind of a dive into this and compare it against previous console generations and about what is most likely going to happen with the pricing for these new systems. So to illustrate my point, I put together this handy little graph here that will showcase the price of all the previous systems and what I believe the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X pricing will be. So let's start out with this graph here. So the pricing scale is from $200 all the way up to $600 here. And we're going to go back through last generation all the way up to next generation. And we're going to include the enhanced consoles in here as well. I didn't want to include previous generations past the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3 because I feel like those aren't too relevant as to what's going to be happening this year in 2020, considering those came out over 15 years ago. So first off, let's start out with the PlayStation 3. So the PlayStation 3 launched at $599. It was a $600 console. And things definitely changed since then. We all know that the PlayStation 3's price was changed out to that. They had different models of PlayStation 3. But for all intents and purposes, in this comparison, we're only going to be comparing the launch price. We're not going to be including like sales pricing. And we're also not going to be including like different models of the consoles. So PlayStation 3 launched at $600, and then as for their competition, the Xbox 360 launched at $400. So that was last generation. This generation, we had the PlayStation 4 launching at $400, and the Xbox One launched for $500. Now this was huge contention back in 2013, was that the Xbox was going to cost $500. It's going to cost $100 more than the PlayStation 4, but there was all these controversies going around too with how you couldn't play used games, with Kinect being always on. And one of the biggest ones was that it was actually weaker than the PlayStation 4. So a lot of people were upset that the Xbox One cost $100 more, but it was actually weaker. You'd expect something that cost more money to be more powerful. I'm not going to show it on this graph here, but Microsoft eventually rectified their mistake here, and they dropped the price of the Xbox One to match Sony's, and they've done a lot of great things since then, but it launched at $500, and the PlayStation 4 launched at $400. Now this is important, because this kind of demonstrates a good area of what we can expect for pricing, is because this is what they launched at this last generation, and also really closely ties into sales. So the PlayStation 4 has sold well over 100 million systems this generation, whereas the Xbox, I believe, has only sold around 40 or 50 million so far. And I'm sure part of that is due to pricing. I think this is a huge factor in determining what system somebody is going to buy. If they see a system that's way too expensive, they're going to be like, I'm not going to buy that one. There's a reason why you have phones like the iPhone XR and the iPhone SE that are selling way more units than, say, the iPhone 12 Pro. And it's because of pricing. It's because they're cheaper, they're more budget friendly, so more people can afford them. So now let's continue though. Let's go into the enhanced consoles. So in 2016, Sony released the PlayStation 4 Pro for $400. Now this was really good because this is an enhanced system. It's a lot more powerful than a standard PlayStation 4, but it also launched at the same exact price as the base PlayStation 4. So only 3 years later, it launched still at $400. And when they did that, they discontinued the original PlayStation 4 and released the PlayStation 4 Slim for $300. So there was a $100 price gap between the base system and the enhanced system. So you could get a budget PlayStation 4 for $300. Of course, you can go lower on the used market. We're not going to be talking about that. This is all just brand new retail pricing, but a base PlayStation 4 for $300 and then a PlayStation 4 for $400. So it was up to you to make that decision of, oh, do I want to spend $100 extra in order to get something that's way more powerful, can play games at higher resolutions and stuff, get a pro enhanced console, or do I just want the base one? And it's a pretty good strategy. I mean, I feel like $100 is a great price point in between the two systems. And not to be outdone, Microsoft released the Xbox One S for $300 as well. So this was just like the PlayStation 4 Slim. It was a slimmed down version of the original system. And what Microsoft did here was that they matched the price of the PlayStation 4 with this one. So you could buy a PlayStation 4 or an Xbox One S for the exact same price for $300. And as for the final console that has been released so far is the Xbox One X, which was released at $499. So a $500 system. So this is what the current lineup looks like even now in 2020. The Xbox One X is $100 more than the PlayStation 4 Pro, but it can be justified by the fact that it's significantly more powerful than the PlayStation 4 Pro, and Microsoft went all out with the Xbox One X and changed just about everything from the original Xbox One, but it launched at $500, so $100 more than a PlayStation 4 Pro and $200 more than an Xbox One S. Last year, they released an Xbox One S All Digital Edition for $250, so this is the same as an Xbox One S, it just does not have a disc drive. I've posted videos about this before on my channel, but this is what the current lineup looks like in 2020 currently. So what does this all mean for the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5's pricing? Where are these new consoles going to sit in this stack? Well, I personally believe that the PlayStation 5 will sit right here at the $400 price point. Sony has had great success with the PlayStation 4 originally launching there, as well as the PlayStation 4 Pro. It's a good price point where it's something that is a little bit more premium. It's $400. That's nothing to sneeze at. But it's also not terribly expensive. I mean, like going back to the phone argument, that's the same price as the iPhone SE. And another reason why I'm placing it here is because of the hardware that has been revealed to be in the PlayStation 5 so far. We know that the PlayStation 5 is a little bit weaker than the Xbox Series X. It will have a great SSD, but in terms of the GPU and CPU, it's a little bit weaker than the Xbox Series X. And as I've already covered on the channel, leaks are saying that the PlayStation 5 is costing around like $480 to make as for parts. So if that's the case, if it costs like $480 in parts, how is it going to be sold for $400? Well, this is due to the fact that Sony and Microsoft are what are called loss leaders. So they would take a product like the PlayStation 5 and it might cost $480, $500, maybe even $600, and instead sell it for less. So even though it might cost almost $500 in the parts and all the components and stuff, there's still a good chance that they would sell it for $400. And that's because even if they take a loss on every single system sold, they will recoup those losses by the fact that everybody who buys a system is going to go out and they're going to buy games for that system. They're going to buy PlayStation Plus subscriptions. They're going to buy headsets, controllers and stuff. And that's where Sony and Microsoft make up those losses. So they might lose $50, $100 on every system sold, but you got to think over the lifetime of those systems, all those customers are going to be buying games and spending $60 a year on PlayStation Plus and Xbox Live, headsets, controllers, lots of different things on these systems. And like I said, that's where they make up the loss. And this has happened before with just about every console. So Microsoft has done that with the Xbox One X, Sony's done that with the PlayStation 4, and I guarantee it's going to also happen this generation. AMD's GPU and CPU in the Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5 guarantee is not cheap, plus the 4K Blu-ray drive, the SSD, all these components in these systems, I'm sure it's going to cost way more than $400 or even $500, but both Sony and Microsoft are going to take a hit on these systems. Now the question is to be asked, how much of a hit are they going to take? Like I said, I believe the PlayStation 5 is going to launch at $400. I think Sony has had great success here, and I don't think that they want to change that too much. But as we know, they're going to be taking about like an $80 loss on all these systems. Is that something that Sony is going to want to do? An $80 loss? I could see them taking like a $25, $50 loss on every system, upwards of $80 to $100 on every system. I'm not too sure. I think Sony will definitely want to do that though, because I believe the Xbox Series X is going to launch at $500. Microsoft's console is a very premium console and has a lot of high-end components in it. They've taken great care in designing this system, and just by taking a look at like the cooling and how they have like a split motherboard, has a really powerful AMD ZEN 2 CPU and a really powerful AMD RDNA 2 GPU combined with a 4K Blu-ray player and an SSD. I think we're going to see an Xbox Series X at $500. I think they're going to match the Xbox One X. And I believe that Microsoft is going to go the same route as they did this generation with the Xbox One X compared to the PlayStation 4 Pro. I believe Microsoft is going to tout this as the most powerful console ever, and that's what they're going to push with this new system. Is that yes, it might be $100 more expensive than the PlayStation 5, but you're also getting a much more powerful console out of it. So now let's actually talk enhanced consoles. So there's no official word on any enhanced consoles being worked on or releasing for Microsoft or for Sony, but it's probably safe to say that eventually we're going to be getting a PlayStation 5, a PlayStation 5 Pro, and an Xbox Series X or something, whatever they want to call it. So as for a PlayStation 5 Pro, where would that sit at? I believe a PlayStation 5 Pro is probably going to be around $500. There's been a lot of rumors and talk saying that since Sony has been beat by Microsoft, that Microsoft has the most powerful console with the Xbox Series X, that Sony does not want that, and that they will be releasing an enhanced console next year or the year after. So where could a PlayStation 5 Pro sit? Well, it seems likely that a PlayStation 5 Pro would sit right around the $500 or even $600 range, judging from the fact that it's going to be having really new modern hardware in it. And a PlayStation 5 Pro, I'm sure, would have an even more powerful CPU and GPU than the current PlayStation 5, and the price would need to reflect that. So would it be $500 or would it be $600? I don't think that Sony is going to make a $600 mistake again, and I'm sure Microsoft has learned from that and will not either. $600 is just too much to spend on a console. The average consumer isn't going to want to spend $600 on a console. There will be power users and enthusiasts who will spend any amount of money on a high-end system, but your average consumer is way more likely to walk into a Target and buy a $300 or a $400 system compared to a $600 console. So if the PlayStation 5 Pro ever does come out, I believe it'll be a $500 console. And as for Microsoft's response to that, well, we've heard for a while now that Microsoft is also working on an Xbox Series S as their budget lineup. So the Xbox Series X is going to be Microsoft's powerhouse. That's going to be their new high-end system, just like the Xbox One X. But Microsoft will be also releasing a budget system similar to the Xbox One S, which would be the Xbox Series S. Now, as for the Xbox Series S, where will that sit? I believe the Xbox Series X will be a $300 system. There's rumors that it might not even have a Blu-ray drive. It might take the route of the Xbox One S All Digital Edition, does not have a Blu-ray player. And of course, since it will be budget-friendly system, it will have a kind of a cutback CPU and GPU to line up with that budget. But I could also see it being a $250 system. I think this is Microsoft's best bet, is to also release an Xbox Series X, because if they release an Xbox Series S and an Xbox Series X, with this much of a gap between them, they corner the market by having the high-end premium system, the Xbox Series X, and then they also have the budget system at the low end being $250 or $300. Now this corners Sony because people who are looking for power are most likely going to turn to the Xbox Series X. They're willing to fork over a little bit more cash for an Xbox Series X to get that better experience. Meanwhile, you have consumers who just want a new system. They heard that Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War is coming out for these new systems and it looks great on these new generation. They're like, oh, I gotta get in on this new generation of consoles. And they go into Best Buy and they say, oh, an Xbox Series X? That's a new generation, that's a new console. And it's only $250 or $300, that's awesome, I'm going to buy that. It'd be a great way to get people into this new generation for very cheap, and I think it'd be very smart for Microsoft to do this. And there's talk going around that Microsoft might not actually be releasing an Xbox Series S because of where the Xbox Series X will fit. So there's two kind of general rumors going around about the Xbox Series S. One regarding power, saying that, well, why would they want to release a weaker system that developers are going to have to support? So that would be the new bar, is that rather than games taking full advantage of the Xbox Series X, games are now targeting the Series S as the bottom line rather than the X as the bottom line. So that could be a concern. And the other thing too is that Microsoft might not even have to release an Xbox Series S because of the pricing of the PlayStation 5. There's rumors going around the PlayStation 5 might actually be a $500 console, just like the Xbox Series X. Sony might be forced to make it a $500 console. And now we've heard from both Microsoft and Sony that they're being conscious of this and they're trying to see what their competition is going to be pricing their system at. And we know that Sony is going to be revealing the PlayStation 5 in just a couple of days. So I'm sure they're going to reveal the actual console itself, as well as pricing and most likely release date. Of course, they're also going to be showing off games and stuff, whereas Microsoft is having their event in July. So that gives Microsoft an extra month to finalize the pricing of the Xbox Series X. So it's very likely that Sony will announce that in the next couple of days as the pricing of the PlayStation 5. And if Sony announces the PlayStation 5 at $500, Microsoft, all they need to do is just match that, or they could even undercut them as well. So if Sony launches the PlayStation 5 at the same price, Microsoft might not even have to release an Xbox Series S. Because from what we've heard, the Xbox Series S was supposed to be their budget-friendly one in order to corner Sony in the market. So Sony's PlayStation 5 is going to be a little bit cheaper. And so in order to cut them off, Microsoft will release an Xbox Series S down below for even cheaper. Now, it's still possible, even if the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X both launch at $500, I think it would still be smart to have a budget system. It would ensure way more sales for Xbox's new console generation, but there are a bunch of factors that would affect this, and it might not actually be the best idea to release an Xbox Series S. But that is it. That is all the speculation we can really do right now as for where these consoles will sit. I believe the Xbox Series X is going to be $500. I'm sure it's going to cost way more than $500 to produce, but I think Microsoft would be a fool to try and sell it for anything over $500. I feel like $500 is a good price point for it. And then Sony, I feel that they definitely know this, and since their system is a little bit weaker, they're going to basically have to sell theirs for $100 less. It's going to repeat itself from last generation where you're going to be able to get a PlayStation console for $100 less, but it's weaker. So do you want to spend that extra $100 on more power, or would you rather save that and put that towards games or something like that? That's been the question a lot of people have been asking this generation. But there we go. That is where I believe the pricing for the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5 will be. It would be curious to come back at some point and rewatch this video to see how accurate this was. And if I were to make a second guess here, I would say that the Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5 might also be $500. So I think the Xbox Series X locked in at $500. I don't think Microsoft really wants to go any lower than that, but it also would be kind of funny and interesting to see if Microsoft went lower in order to combat Sony. And if Sony released a PlayStation 5 for $400, be kind of cool to see Microsoft also match that and release the Series X for $400 as well. That is going to do it for our video today, guys. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of all of this. Where do you believe that the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X will sit pricing wise? And also let me know what you guys think about an Xbox Series S. Do you think Microsoft should release one in order to ensure more sales and have a system at the budget end? Or should they just stick with the Xbox Series X? Let me know all this stuff in the comments down below. Thank you all so much for watching. If you guys are new around here, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel with notifications on. We've got a lot of great videos on the channel. And like I said, Sony is going to be having their reveal of the PlayStation 5 in just a few days. So make sure you guys are subscribed. Don't miss out on that. That is all for our video today, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.